know, you mentioned last time we were talking that you did some magistration or
I'm a municipal court judge.
municipal.
Uh, I have a court of record, so I get a bunch of like code enforcement stuff, abatement stuff,
Which
things like that.
municipality?
The city of Westlake Hills, up in the Austin area.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, they wanted someone who wasn't local. So,
That's that's a nice area. Actually, I'm heading out for the domain tomorrow or the Arboretum. I'm one of the two.
oh yes, very nice.
Um, I
Are you
like.
going to one of the trainings?
No, my older son is is a student at the University of Texas, and he's
Ah,
taking some requisite courses to get into the master's program. He kind of switched professions there late in the game, so he's trying to get into a different master's program, and he needed a few extra classes, so he's doing that. And he had COVID a couple of weeks ago, and but he's fine now. I mean, he's negative, but I hadn't seen him in a while, so I'm gonna.
mm, mm-hmm.
I have two weeks on, 2 weeks off where I do jail duty
Ah,
a
yes.
weekend. So, and this is the last weekend I have kind of free, so I have to take advantage. And then
I'm lucky. I don't have to do any jail duty for that city because the county takes care of it.
him.
Uh,
But when I first started as a part-time associate judge almost 2 years ago, that was one of the initial, and still I still have that duty. But I actually that's one of my more, I say enjoyable because we're engaged in the process. And I primarily did civil work as a lawyer. So having to get up to speed on criminal,
mhm.
state criminal, I did federal work as well, and federal work comes federal appointment. So I
Yeah,
was very well versed in the criminal aspects under federal law, but it's very different
very different.
state.
Yes, sir.
You know,
Yes.
I did drug cases and illegal transportation cases in the federal level and some other stuff, but it doesn't really translate to state the state law very well.
No, Judge, it doesn't. I completely agree with you. Um, and the state, I mean, Texas has, I mean, there are certain things that they're very like strict about. This is all you can do. Boom, boom, boom. And then there are other things where they're very general and they give you no guidance whatsoever. It's like,
Well,
yeah, just make it reasonable, or yeah, just make it so that they'll show up, and that that really doesn't help.
yeah, no, but it's still a learning experience, and but and I since COVID, I've kind of missed that direct contact you have with everything, the defendants, the prosecutors,
Mm-hmm.
um, and slowly coming back. We've had some
Yeah.
hiccups, and obviously with COVID, making sure that the magistration process continues and we set bonds and everything is critical, because of the capacity of the jail.
Right.
And so we, and it's very important that we're able to, especially for the nonviolent offenders, that they get a bond set in a timely fashion so they can get out.
Yes, sir.
Um,
I completely agree.
and I, and quite, some people that get arrested need to be there, but
Yeah.
for the most part, uh, some of these guys that I unfortunately have come to know on a first name basis now, what we call our frequent flyers. Some of them are pretty funny, and lighthearted about the whole
Mhm.
process. I don't see how, but I guess you become accustomed to the deal, but
Yes, sir. It's like, oh, you again. Hey, Judge, how are the kids? How you
yeah,
doing?
no, and I keep telling them, this is the bad thing that I know your first name and last name,
by
even
sight.
with even with a
Yeah.
mask on.
Yeah.
What am I supposed to do with you?
And they never have an answer. It's like, oh, well, Judge, things
Well,
happen, and they never really, they don't
I,
help themselves, I
I
guess.
didn't do it. I didn't do it. I didn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's-
that's true.
I actually have this gentleman who's the third time he says he writes songs, that he's going to write a song, what they call a corrido for me, who I now, one of the persons that I know. And this is the second time he's been arrested because he says, well, no, what I was actually doing was helping the city by cleaning up the park, and I found the drug. And I go, you told me that last time. I go, you need to quit picking up trash.
Yeah. And if you see a bag that might be drugs on the ground, leave it there. Walk away. Of course, that's not what happened. That's his explanation.
Looks like we have everyone, I think. Are we ready?
Judge, actually, my client is trying to log on.
Well,
He had been,
I just admitted him twice, actually,
okay.
on two different devices, it looks like. Are we waiting for anyone else, Mr. Henry? I see we have someone from the authority.
I have Mr. Miller here, Your Honor. The assistant airport director may or may not show up, but oh, there she is. There, and I think that's it, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Lopez is there. Okay. I'll call the case. Is everyone else ready to go? All right, let me call the case and then we'll get started here. Court calls 2021 CVK 0000507 D1 in the matter of Wolf Hoffman Jet Racing and Sales Inc. versus Laredo International Airport, City of Laredo. Okay, well, I guess this is a continuation from my prior ruling. Basically, we have someone else from the city. One more. So, Mr. Wynn. For those of you showing up, I just called the case and basically indicated that this is a continuation from my ruling last time. So let me start by asking this first question to both sides. Is there any dispute as to what property is owned by Mr. Wolf Hoffman?
Either owned or that he has, a right of possession over.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any dispute on that, Your Honor.
Okay.
I don't think there's a dispute, but I mean, we can dispute over whether it's him individually or him through the corporation, but he controls the corporations that are.
Well, he is listed as an individual in the lawsuit, so I'm assuming either him or Jet Racing Sales and American Air Freight Company.
Yes.
But there's not gonna, Mr. Tejas, do you know there's gonna be an issue regarding any fixtures that are involved?
Well, the entire lease was originally for raw land. Everything else was provided for by and built by Mr. Hoffman, but there's a lot of other items there that are subject to removal.
Well, I mean, we would have to go back into the detail, but at some point in time, the lease was gonna end. I mean, I know it ended sooner rather than later, but were there any provisions regarding the fixtures? I'm assuming they stay with the land.
Yes, Your Honor. The lease basically said he can build it he can build the hangars in order to use the land during the term of the lease, and when the lease is over, it reverts to the city. But it was designed, it's a land lease, which is kind of a special kind of lease, but they're designed to help with development. And he got to build the hangars and use them for his purposes. So he built them specifically for his purposes, but yes, the lease has a condition that upon the termination of the lease, the hangars revert to the city, but all the property in the inside, I don't think there's any dispute that plaintiffs, plural, it's collectively in some fashion theirs.
I agree with that assessment. It was just more about differentiating between the hangar and I guess the structure and everything else in between inside.
So we're not gonna have any issues regarding any fixtures. And I'm assuming everything attached to the fixtures, like, I don't know, if it has,
Air conditioner,
yeah,
electrical box, that kind of stuff.
that's considered part of the fixture.
Yes, Your Honor. It's part of the improvement. And I mean, I have not, Mr. Diaz and I have not discussed that specifically. I don't think it's been an issue. The issue has all been about about the stuff in the hangars.
Okay, so the
So-
next,
I think that's more of an accurate representation. It's
so
more
my
of,
next question is, how much time or is your client looking at, Mr. Diaz, to remove his property?
that is where we run into our problems, is that if my client is given access and he's ready to testify, one of the obstructions we've had, not including getting shut down because of the freeze, not including having less employees because of COVID, like taking all that into consideration, what we've had problems with is constant inspections by the city that have exceeded the scope of what they're there for, that take
Well, at
3 to
the-
4 hours at a time.
hold on, at this point in time, the property is now the city, so, I mean, I think they're allowed to do whatever they want as
Well-
far as inspection, so hold on a second. And the last time, well, and this is, I mean, the original judgment back in November had a 10-day window for your client to remove his stuff. And that was, again, going back to the agreed order. And I guess that's kind of a starting point for me is, you know, if the 10 days were agreed to last time, and I'm going to give you a fair amount of time. I'm going to work off of that, but why would you need more than 10 days? If the original agreement was 10 days.
I can, if the court either wants me to put Mr. Wolf Hoffman or Adi Hoffman as witnesses, or would the court just take my
That's why I'm asking you,
well,
what do you think you need? And bear in mind this, is that the city wants, based on their motion, the city wants to be able to supervise this in order to limit liability. And that's fine. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, what we'll do is set times during, business hours to allow, because I don't want them having to send people over there in the evening, having to work overtime in order to, if they want to supervise, they're going to have that right. Okay. But I do, because of the fact that I am contemplating putting time limitations that works for both of you all, I'm willing to extend the original agreement, which was 10 days, that was entered in by Judge Martinez originally. So based on that, what do you have to tell me?
first of all, there are airplanes involved. In order for them to move the airplanes, they need to file applications with the airport and request permission to move these airplanes.
How many airplanes are we talking about?
I believe 9. Mr. Hoffman, Adi or Wolf, can you tell me exactly how many?
You're on mute, Mr. Hoffman.
There are 9 airplanes, Your Honor.
No, there are 10 airplanes actually.
Okay, so let's do this. Okay, we'll talk about the airplanes first, but so
And
what about everything else?
there are hazardous materials there, number 2. Number 3, there are items in, I'm going to say the phrase incorrectly, but it's a free trade. Mr. Hoffman, what is it called?
Let me explain.
Well,
There's
no. First, what is the name of the area
Free
called?
trade zone. free trade zone, which is these are it's bonded merchandise under the control of U.S. Customs.
So permission has to be sought from customs to move some of this?
Yes.
Yes, Your Honor, for each and every single lot. The warehouse, which is like 12,000 square feet of foreign trade zone, plus the yard, is divided in lots of merchandise, and each lot needs an individual permit from U.S. Customs.
And not only do they need the permission from U.S. Customs, the actual customs brokers and transportation companies are the ones that have to come get it and take it, since he's just a storer.
Your Honor, may I comment?
Sure, go ahead.
And I don't necessarily disagree with that aspect, but they also have the ability to move it to another free trade zone that's either on the airport or somewhere else, and that can be worked out between the plaintiffs and the other free trade zone operator.
That is accurate. That is accurate. 100%. The problem is we have obstruction from the city in allowing them to move it, and Mr. Henry may not have physically been present or may not have been aware, but we've had issues with moving the planes, moving the merchandise, and so that's why it's taken longer than it should have.
Moving it where? So you already have a place to put them, you just haven't been able to. Where are you going to be moving them? There at the airport or off?
There's only two places. They have to stay there at the airport, correct, Mr. Hoffman?
That is correct. But in order, for instance, we fixed an airplane that we had to deliver, Your Honor, and they requested from us a special permit to go to the tarmac to do a power run of the airplane. It took them close to 2 months to grant us the permit when it should have been in 4 or 5 days. We paid the deposit, we paid the permit, and after a week, they said, no, the permit is invalid, you have to go out, and they wouldn't allow us to go to the tarmac. So here we are again with a...
hold on a second. Who was it that said you couldn't do it? The city or the federal government?
The authorities at the airport director, I guess, said that. And immediately they issue a bulletin canceling our permit and not allowing us to enter. Change the locks and everything.
Well, I'm assuming that the permits involve not only city, but probably some federal requirements. But I mean, was the impediment anything to do with the city?
No, as a matter of fact, before they grant us that permit, we were approved by TSA because this is a restricted area. So TSA granted us that permit after a checkup. That was directly from the airport director through security at the airports.
Yeah, but the city wants you out of there. I can't imagine that they would take a position.
I think the court and Mr. Henry give the city too much credit. The city is punitive and retaliatory. And I say that through my experience of working with the city. The individual city officers have a history of retaliation. And so, and I can bring up specific instances, just like the hearing.
Just for future references, because we're going to set something up here. And Mr. Hoffman, if in fact there is a city official that is, I would want you to keep a list so that we can then figure out whether this is a federal issue that's preventing the movement of either the airplanes or anything else, the chemicals, or a city issue. And then that we can address here.
But also, Judge, just keep in mind that in some of these instances, we need the city sign off before we get to the second level sign off. And if it's frustrated, and the second level sign off is independent of the first level, and if the first one, which would be the city and the airport officials, if they say no, they can't say it no because the second one told us no. It's step one, then step two.
Is the city going to be able to designate anyone in particular, a point person that's going to be responsible to make sure that the city permits?
It depends on the permit, Your Honor. But we're talking about, I mean, the city officials at the at the city have designated roles that they're supposed to do, but they all go under the airport director and the assistant airport director. So we can make sure that any communication and permit aspects flow through the right people. But I'm really not going to dignify their comments on the city's action. We're here to try and find out what we're doing going forward. The city needs to be able to have access to the hangar for reletting and the aspects regarding the airplanes. Your Honor, may I interject with just kind of a category perspective? You can tell me where you want to go, because the different types of property do require different types of permits and things. So you've got the aircraft, which does require certain aspects in order to handle. You've got the hazardous chemicals, as Mr. Diaz did say. You've got basically all the other property that's stored there that isn't in the free trade zone. And you've got the free trade zone property. And so we kind of have to address each category a little differently. The city's main objective at the moment is in all the other property that's in the hangar is what needs to kind of be out of there. The planes, because we do recognize it can take a little bit to get them moved or relocated, but the city also is kind of bound because it has an ordinance that actually says that any airplane that's not flyable for more than so many days is charged a parking fee. And we're trying to avoid having to impose some of that stuff on Mr. Hoffman. But if the planes are going to be there, we kind of have to follow the ordinance requirements for it. And so we've been asking for certain information since December over and over again, and that's already kind of in the record. So how would you like to handle it?
Okay, let's do this. Okay. And I'm going to label all the stuff that doesn't require permits and or permission from either the federal government or the city as the other stuff like tools and desk and stuff like that. I don't, and we'll kind of do a working, and what I'm going to, and it's going to take longer than I'm looking at least for the next 3 weeks, starting Monday. How early does the city want to report to the site if they want to send an observer or security or whatever? But I was thinking something like 9 to 4:30, Monday through Friday, to start taking out what I call the other stuff immediately.
I think that would be fine, Judge.
And that way we don't run again, just to be mindful that the city doesn't want to have to, I don't want to have them put someone there overtime. So yes. From 9 to 4:30.
Write down all the notes from Hoffman's hearing or whoever's listening to it.
Okay.
If I can approach the court?
Yes.
Can I say something, Your Honor?
Yes, Mr. Hoffman, go ahead.
Your Honor, it's a lot more complicated than that. We presented the airport long time ago, since late November, early December, a plan with exactly the same categories that we needed to take out, and how long would it take for each item to, each category to be out of the hangars in good faith, so we could comply with everything. And they didn't comment anything, and that was close to a year on December. They didn't say anything, and it was quite a surprise to us when they came back and said, no, yeah, you have to go out in 10 or 15 days. Let me explain you what we do, so you can imagine what we're talking about. We had warehouses where we had 60,000 square feet of storage merchandise, good commercial domestic merchandise, that we said we're going to start taking out right away in order to start moving and empty the hangars. And that's what we did. We came in the 90 days that we said that it was going to take us to do it. We did 95% of that. But then we have, for instance, the airplanes. Out of these 90.
Okay, look, Mr. Hoffman, I understand about the airplanes needing special permission and everything, but there are certain things. And
No,
I
but
don't-
not only,
but there's
not only
certain
that,
things
Your
where
Honor.
you can back up a truck and just start loading the stuff and start clearing it out.
Yeah, a lot of that, Judge, we can do. The only thing is that not everything that's there in that warehouse is independent stuff. Like some of it pertains to the airplane, some of it pertains to other items. So if we can somehow differentiate the items that are in the free warehouse that pertain to other stuff that needs to be loaded or moved, I mean, I would hope that the court would kind of like give us wiggle room on, obviously boxes of supplies or whatever can be moved, but stuff that is needed for the other items, like it's.
Well, I'm assuming, and this should have started, Mr. Diaz, already, that whatever permits are needed for the planes, the chemicals, and I'm gonna call it the bonded stuff in the free zone that belongs to someone else, that those permits are already in process with the federal and city, with the federal government and the city of Laredo, right?
For the most part, yes, but some of them have been kicked back and for the most part, yes.
Okay, so that should have been started already. And the other, as far as what I call the other stuff, that stuff where you don't need permission from the city or the federal government to get out, that needs to be started ASAP, Monday.
We could do it today. Mr. Hoffman has people there waiting that they could go start getting some of that stuff out. And a lot of that stuff's been being moved. It's just they're trying to juggle 4 different things at once.
Well, I don't have any problems allowing him to do that up until 4:30 today.
That's fine.
If the city, bearing in mind that they want to supervise, is that going to be a problem for the city of Laredo? Is there someone, or Mr. Henry, or someone that can address that?
No, we can have somebody there, Your Honor. And once we know what the kind of the cycle or the system is that they're using, they may come and go, but they definitely need to be there to open up, and they need to be there to close. When Mr. Hoffman left yesterday, he actually locked things up with his locks, so the city actually can't get into the property right now.
I'm sure they have.
No, that's not,
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay, Mr. Hoffman, I amended the order yesterday saying, at least up until today, that you were denied access. So there's a lock on there. Either the city can break it or you can open it. And we're going to set a time when that's going to happen today. If both sides feel that that's enough time, really, we're talking about 3.5 hours to at least start moving some of the stuff. Can the city have someone there at 1 o'clock? And Mr. Hoffman, you can be there at 1 o'clock and starting at 1 o'clock, not before. Just to make it clear, someone from the city has to be there for you to open it, or I'm giving them authority to break the locks and put their own locks on there, starting at 1 o'clock today, to start moving what we call the other stuff. Now, you mentioned there are 10 planes. Are the 10 planes going to be taken off the airport property or moved to another hangar that another company owns?
Your Honor, there is no other hangar. And out of these 10 airplanes, we can probably put 6 or 7 out, but 3 of these airplanes are already committed. One is to a customer in Vegas, which we're finishing and we need to deliver. And 2 other airplanes are bound to the University of Mississippi. And in order to deliver those airplanes, we need the hangars, because down there, that's where we have the air connections, the hydraulic connections, to be able to finish those airplanes. You cannot work on the tarmac for those airplanes.
So, Mr. Diaz and Mr. Hoffman, I'm assuming that as far as the 10 airplanes are concerned, all the paperwork has either in the process of being submitted or is it waiting for the approval. So do what you have to do with that, and I'll tell you what we're going to do in reference to how these permits are working, because we're going to have to come back and have a status hearing. So we have 10 planes, and I expect us to hear that the paperwork the next time we meet and I'm going to want to know why, if they were rejected, why they're being rejected. So the movement of the planes is in progress, correct?
Yes, Judge. And we can resubmit. I would rather just resubmit whatever applications we need to, because even for the movement of the non-mobile planes, they still got to ask for permission to do it.
That's fine. I'm just, in general terms, that needs to already be in the works or started immediately. Secondly, the chemicals, are we talking about one chemical or several different chemicals that require different levels of?
Several different chemicals. However, the city's environmental department did 2 inspections, one February and one March. And as long as Mr. Hoffman can provide the city with a destination location for them, and that destination has a C of O, they can actually issue the permit. They've been standing by in order to do that. And that's all that's needed for him to be able to move the permits, move the chemicals from the permit city side.
So where are the chemicals headed, Mr. Diaz? Do you know? Do your client?
No, we're gonna get a new warehouse to put all that in the new place, Your Honor, and we have the hazmat permit current, and our reports are current with them.
So really, the city should have the destination place already. You can provide them to the city today. The destination locale?
No.
Why not?
No, not now. Not now, because we need to prepare. We need to prepare the special place for these drums to be stored. We need temperature control, and we need a special place. A special place is not any place.
Well, you said you already had the warehouse. How long is it going to take to have the warehouse ready for receipt of the chemical?
Probably just for that 2 weeks, Your Honor.
And the preparation is going to be able to house all of the chemicals that are currently.
Well, once we prepare that to house all the chemicals, probably another 2 weeks.
So you're saying you need a month to get the warehouse ready for the chemical receipt? For
these special chemicals, yes, Your Honor. And let me explain something else that I haven't brought up to the court. There is very special equipment because we were a repair station, an aircraft repair station, and we have the capacity of turbine overhaul. The only one in Laredo, and probably the only one in Texas, that we could overhaul turbines for that kind of airplane. So there is a lot of special equipment, special ovens, special balancing equipment.
I understand that, Mr. Hoffman, but let me tell you, at some point in time, if this takes too long, the court will consider whether or not you should be paying rent to stay there, because we've had an order that's been in place since November. So you need to make haste, and I'm going to set a status hearing on this case before we leave here today. But, you've had the court's ruling at least a week now, and you had the other court's ruling for 4 months. So why you're not already in the works and prepared to receive these chemicals at a different site is.
Your Honor, actually, let me clarify one other thing. And Mr. Henry can correct me if I'm wrong. I think there is no dispute that since November they've been paying rent. It's not
okay.
This is not an issue where they've been staying. They've actually been current. That was part of the factual basis for our TRO, that the city wasn't losing anything because they were still receiving rents. And the premise that Mr. Henry said about potential lessors.
Yes, I mean, and I guess my comment is in reference to additional damages, because
there is no other potential lessor. The city has done this, and that's part of our petition. Is that they've done this on a regular basis to other people.
Well, I just want to make sure, Mr. Tejas, that your client and you understand that the court sees some urgency in getting this done, because I don't want to get coming back just to supervise the removal. Now, I realize it has to be done, but there needs to be some urgency on your client's part to get this done quickly, rather than and I know you're saying you had some problems. I'm not discounting that.
I agree with the court, and I've advised Mr. Hoffman that we do need to be a lot more forceful and more quick in getting this done, but I just don't want the court to think that they're freeloading or whatever. The city's not losing anything.
Okay, well,
And that part, I want that to be clear, but I'm not saying using that as an excuse.
the fact that we're here and with a full staff and having to address this is that the county indirectly is losing something. So, I mean, there should have been a plan in the works. So there is a loss. Okay, so I understand. So from what I'm understanding, this is going to take about a month. We'll see where we are here, and we'll decide whether we need to come back in 2 or 3 weeks here before we leave. And then the last item that I have is I guess is the bonded. I'm calling it the bonded merchandise that belongs to other people. That we need custom brokers to approve the move, because I'm assuming that belongs to some customer, some third party that's not, part of this lawsuit. But I mean, we don't want to cause damage to somebody else's property and then have other lawsuits spring up. So how long are we looking as far as the bonded stuff?
You're asking me, Your Honor?
Anyone, Mr. Tejas or Mr.
It'll be at least 60 days.
Your Honor, the hard part is the hard part about those items is we have no control over how quickly customs will approve the movement of that item. Number two, we have no control over, we got to get permission from customs. Mr. Hoffman can correct me if I'm wrong, customs, as well as then coordinate it with the actual carriers or the brokers.
That's a second permit.
Okay.
There is one, Your Honor. It's a permit to take it out, a permit to transport, and a permit to make another lot in another location. And let me add something, Your Honor. I don't mind paying the same rent as we're paying as long as we have time to. So the airport and the county and no one is going to lose anything. I'm current. I've always been current with my rent. So the only thing I need is the time exactly to be able to finish deliver these 3 airplanes and be able to take my equipment and my merchandise that have been stored, I've been storing for the last 45 years at the airport.
No, and I, again, Mr. Hoffman, and I know things didn't turn out the way you meant, but the fact that we have a proceeding here and the court, I mean, the city is incurring additional costs because of the attorneys that are involved in this case. And so, and that's one way or another, again, and I understand there's other players involved, other governmental entities, but I think this ended up, and it's basically on your lap. And the fact that if the city is out any losses, I have to take that into account if this goes on longer than 2 months. And so you need to be aware that the city is incurring the fact that we have 2 different city officials here. We have an attorney here from San Antonio. And last I checked, this all cost, and as well as your attorney. I mean, but okay. So I understand that really, in an ideal world, you'll be out in 2 months. That's probably not going to happen. There's going to be some hiccups based on what you're telling me. As far as the applications first, there's 3 applications that are involved for the bonded stuff. I'm assuming the first level of applications are already in the works or have already been filed, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, gentlemen. So the order of the court is going to be that as far as what can be removed starting today at 1 o'clock to 4:30, that's going to be the order of the court. No, other than the city, no one is allowed on the property until 1 o'clock. And again, if you have a lock on there, Mr. Hoffman, you might want to go there a little bit early and wait for somebody from the city to show up before you open it, and you need to remove that lock so the city can put their own locks. Um, and then the timetable then to start moving the other stuff will begin on Monday at 9 o'clock and again to 4:30. And I say 4:30 as the cutoff so you can have some time to start at 4:30. You should have already started to wrap things up so you don't, secure whatever has to be secured. If you need some extra time, and that's why I said 4:30 to clean up or whatever. Um, I'm asking the city I'm putting the actual trying to remove stuff at 4:30 in case there's some residual work that has to be done, so that it doesn't go.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah, and I'm hoping, Mr. Diaz, that if somehow you don't need time, in other words, let's say you get everything done in next week instead of 2, that the fact that you're not going to be going there, and actually I'm going to make that an order, that part of the order, that if you're not going to be showing up for
We will
any,
advise the city.
you will advise the city that you're not going to be, you're not going to need anyone there, and that no one will be on the property. So you will be required to do that if you're not going to show up between 9 and 4:30, because I don't want people showing up there if your client's not going to be there.
Your Honor, I want to make sure, I don't know how the court wants to structure the order, but what we want to make sure is that although there's going to be the removal of, I guess, for vulgarly put, the other stuff,
Yeah,
that the city
that was
does-
my word, by the way.
that the city don't obstruct the work on, let's say, there's the 3 airplanes that he has a contract that he needs to finish, that he's allowed to, like kind of like the office, or that they can be concurrently doing other items, but as long as just because
But Your Honor, he can't be making repairs and doing the things that he was previously authorized to do. Our issue is he needs to get this stuff off. We understand there are logistics to getting the stuff off, but going in and actually like doing airplane repairs to make it flyable and ordering parts and actually operating as a airplane repair place for customers, that's utilizing the premises for an operation. And with all due respect to Mr. Hoffman, the city does not wish to have him as a tenant. That's why he's evicted.
Well, I understand.
We don't want to be in a
that.
position where that's what's happening.
Okay, so what's going to happen then with that plane that needs to be shipped to the University of Mississippi? That I understand
Yes.
that.
There are 2 airplanes that go to the University of Mississippi, Your Honor. And I want to clear up something, that we never put a padlock or a chain. That was the city that put the padlock and the chain, not
That's
us.
fine. It doesn't matter. I'm just in general terms now. The city seems to think you did, and so I'm just covering that again.
the thing is, I would understand as far as the city saying, don't take any new clients, don't take any, like, don't continue, but he needs to finish this to get rid of these planes. Like, either the city wants him to get rid of the planes or they don't. And so I don't understand, like, if there's something that the 6 that, yes, he's going to work on them later, he can move them, he'll get them off the property. But if there's stuff that just needs to be finished so they can get rid of it, I would think the city would do it. Now, if the city doesn't want him to continue finishing his work, well, then we'll quit paying rent and whatever. But
No.
We don't want his rent, Your Honor.
Okay.
We want him off.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's the thing, Mr. Diaz. Specifically right now, are you and your client able to tell me what repairs to what planes have to be done?
I can get an itemized list in writing as far as how much needs to be done to finish it and get it off. If it's that substantial that it's going to take a while, I've already told my clients it's a lot easier, just move it and we'll deal with it later. The problem is just getting it, finishing it done. Some are substantially close to completion where you can finish it, and it'd be a lot faster than, it'd be a lot quicker for him to finish his operation than get the application, get permission, move it.
Everything and then fix it. Yeah, I see what you're saying, but
I get the city's position, but some of them are close enough where, like, hey, let's just finish it. It's faster, it's more efficient than doing it the other way. Like, if you really want somebody off, just hurry up and get it done and get out of here. But what they want is they want certain things done, and not everything can be done that quick, even though other things have been being moved at the same time. It's a mixture of the both, and that's why I think we both agreed where the city's time frame wasn't necessarily realistic, but neither was mine. But that's why we wanted the court to give us some sort of guidance on it.
Well,
And if the court doesn't give us a specific order, the city, through their actions and through their words right now, have said they're not going to give any ambiguity or
okay, so then that just gives me, okay, we're going to reconvene in 2 weeks at the same time to see where we are on this. But before then, Mr. Tejas, that
I'll try to get the court. I don't know if I could
well,
get it.
let me tell you what I'm going to, yeah, I'm the order is going to be that no work be done. And I'm not saying from now until the next 2 weeks. What I'm going to, that you need to provide the court and a copy to the city of the list of claims that need work, okay? And then each one, what is it that has to be done with a estimate of time to do the work before, and you're going to address each plane individually. There's only 10. So if we're talking about just putting air on the tires and gassing them up, but if we're talking about rebuilding the engine, that's a whole different animal. And I want estimates as to how much time that's going to take. But I mean, if the plane can be moved and worked on in another warehouse, that's going to be where the court's going to be leaning.
Understood.
But if we're talking about minimal, we're talking about a few hours just to get them out of there, and they can be flown to Mississippi. And then if that's the plane we're talking about, we'll work with that when the time comes. But at this point, the city has a point. They don't want him working there anymore, and I think that's a valid concern. So, but I'm not saying no altogether, because if we're talking about minimal work and it's going to make the process quicker, then we'll bring it up again and then see what the city has to say. But they need to know what it is you want to do there.
That's fine.
Okay.
I understand what the court's saying, and what I will try to get it as soon as possible. And I don't know if the court wants us to just me circulate it as an email, like as an advisory to Mr. Henry and to the court, or
that'll be fine. And this is only as to the planes. So
I've had basic talks with my client that I kind of want all of this on all aspects, but as far as just to get something quicker to the court, let me just get the planes for now.
What do you mean get the planes for now? What does that mean?
Well, get the advisory as far as timeframes, everything that needs to be done.
Okay. Now, okay. So do that, and then what I'm going to ask is that you both prepare proposed orders and send them to me in Word, and the three of us will and I'll work on the order, and it will be out today, regarding what we discussed. Is there anything else we need to cover?
Yes, can I address the court?
Hold on, Mr. Hoffman. I just want to make sure, but we're still getting access today from 1 to 4:30 to get other stuff out, right?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
that's not, I don't foresee us having an order before 1, and I just want everybody to be on the same page that we can do that.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, I can do one on my own, and then
Well, Judge, I would hope that everybody would be operating good faith and like, hey, we don't need an order from the court, and the actual officials who have authority to say yes or no are on the Zoom.
This is for the other stuff that the city has no interest, but at this point. And
he can come at 1 if he leaves at 4:30, Your Honor, today. That's fine. We need him moving. We need the stuff out of there.
they need, yeah, so that's fine. We're going to do that now, and no work will be done on the planes until I receive an advisory and we can address that with the city. And I guess it's going to be plane by plane, but there's only 10. That shouldn't be too bad. And
Your Honor, I do have one thing that I will need to put on the record whenever you're done.
go ahead.
Well, first, I appreciate the court's efforts and consideration in trying to take everything into consideration and develop an order. But the city does need to assert, we don't think this is the proper court to be doing that. That should go back to county. So I assume because you're doing it, you're kind of overruling that objection that we made. They're bringing this in the wrong court.
I would say for the record, I have zero objection transferring this case to County Court at Law number 1.
So I didn't even think about that since.
Is that a request by the city? Because I have no objection.
It's not a transfer. It's I mean, the city's request is it's a dismissal. There are processes in county for handling these kinds of things.
No, this is an independent lawsuit, but if the city wants to make a move to request and waive the jurisdictional requirements, because we still have causes of
We
action.
can't waive the jurisdictional requirements.
Well, then,
Hold on a second. Hold on a
if you
second.
want to transfer this case to County Court at Law 1, I have zero objection. Let's move it today.
No, the question is whether or not, since I basically affirmed the decision of the county court at Law number 1, whether I have plenary power in this lawsuit. And I think I do, at least for the purposes of going forward for the next 2 weeks. But Mr. Henry, if you want to, I'd be happy to transfer the case back to Judge Martinez. If you file a motion that any, basically post judgment, because you have a valid judgment in county court at law.
County Court 1. Yes, Your Honor. So
I think the court would be inclined to grant that. But as far as right now,
That's right.
I'm still within the 30 days, so I still have plenary power under the lawsuit that was filed.
I understand, Your Honor. So I guess the issue is if you've set your status conference in 2 weeks and you sign your order, and between now and the 2 weeks, the city will, the city's objection was really it's a dismissal, but I'll talk to my client about a transfer and whether or not that's the aspect where they want to go. But
yeah, and I think both courts would have, I guess, I don't know if that's the correct word, but concurrent jurisdiction as far as post judgment, because this issue did come before this court, and I don't think there was an objection from the city regarding jurisdiction. So, and the other causes of action, if I recall, are still in this court.
that is correct, Your Honor. That is absolutely correct.
I'll do whatever you all want. If you want to have the hearings with Judge Martinez, I'd rather not have hearings on Friday if I can avoid them, but I will.
Yeah.
So, I'll leave that up to you, but for right now, you all can decide in the next 2 weeks. And if I get a motion, to transfer venue, I'll wait for a response from the plaintiffs in this case and then make a ruling on that.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so
Thank you.
And I'm not going to be, I won't be offended. You want to so
Understood, Your Honor.
you all want to fight in front of another judge, that's fine with me. So and so anyways, okay. But for
Your
now,
Honor, can I address the court?
go just for the last time, Mr. Hoffman, what's up?
The only thing that we're forgetting is our permit to work on the tarmac, on the inside of the airplane, of the airport, so we can complete the airplanes. This is essential for us, and that has nothing to do with the premises, because we're going to be, we were already authorized by TSA by then. So I do not know how do they want for us to accelerate the exit of the airport and accelerate the delivery of the airplanes if they're not allowing us to do our job, which is not is not in opposition or in confrontation with exiting all the merchandise and taking all the merchandise out.
I know, Mr. Hoffman, but their position is that they don't want to prevent you from doing your job. They just don't want you doing your job there.
Well, Judge, the thing is, basically what he's trying to say is, if they get authorization to go from one warehouse on the airport to the other and sublet through somebody else, they already have authorization to work on the tarmac. So
if they are under a sublease of somebody else and that's been transferred, that's fine. They just need to be able to be legal that way and
In other words,
not be on this premises.
Well, the thing is that tarmac is all the tarmac. It's not just.
I know, but they're tied to who's got the sub. So if he subleases,
if he subleases to somebody else,
fine.
he can operate on the tarmac whether the city likes it or not, and that's really it, because he already has authorization to work on the tarmac and he has an appropriate sublease.
Mr. Henry or Judge, Your Honor, Jeffrey Miller, Airport Director, if I may just real briefly on that, add some context. Hello. We have a badge for Mr. Hoffman's, one of his personnel over there. It was shut down through this process, through the eviction, because he doesn't have a lease with another tenant. But we do have that available. We run through TSA, but the city itself grants access to the airfield. So pending the previous conversation about what we do with the aircraft, for now, they don't need this badge while they are on their premise, while they're currently on the premise they're working on. If we were to come to some other agreement through this court, it's not, we can turn the access back on for access to the airfield. So it's not cumbersome. It's not cumbersome to the airport. And it's not cumbersome to this process. So I just wanted to add that context, that if it shifts.
When you say access to the tarmac, that the city is willing to do that or can do that, does that include being able to do whatever repair works they need to get the planes out of there, or no? That's something else.
So in theory, yeah, they could move it to another hangar, as Mr. Henry had mentioned, if they've entered into another sublease. What we really don't want to get into is work on the premise that they currently are leasing, because in that situation, in my opinion, I see that as it's a continuation of the lease, which is what.
Yeah, and the court said that I wasn't going to allow that until I had specific indication.
Right, but if he does enter into an agreement with another entity to work out of their hangar, then we would work with them to grant them access to those locations, and that's not a problem. And we've already started that process when initially we submitted the plan, so that's easily done.
The airfield is a secured area, so you got to have the access to get on and off of it. And so if he's under another sublease, that makes that access easier to do.
Okay, great. Okay. Well, thank you for that, Mr. Miller. That was helpful then. So it looks like there's at least a way for him to sublease, move the plane, or work to move it to the tarmac and then work under that other sublease, right?
Yeah. Well, that's what I understood, and I didn't think that the city really.
And as long as we have, the documentation that shows he's got the right to be there, that's not a problem. Like if we get a copy of the sublease.
He needs to have, I understood that part. Okay. So, we're going to go forward without the order this afternoon, but I'd like to have an order in place for Monday.
That's fine, Judge.
And then
Yes,
Mr.
Your Honor.
Reyes, with the exception of what we just heard, if he gets a sublease and moves a plane and is working under the sublease of some other warehouse or some other agent there, no work is to be done on there at this property that's in dispute. Okay.
Understood.
Until, I guess either I address this again in 2 weeks or Judge Martinez, if you all want to.
Well, I'll send in an advisory with I guess the inventory of the airplanes, just to see if we can expedite that issue. But I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and you list the 10 planes, and basically if one of the planes, no problem or something, so we don't have to worry about all of them. We just want to talk about the ones that are going to be an issue, which are not flyable or need work on or whatever.
That's fine, Judge.
Okay, anything else?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Okay, well, okay, so try to get me some workable order so that I can work on it before I take off today and have something in place.
That's why my paralegal's in here, Judge. She's writing all this down so we can actually send you something.
And then and that'll be, and we'll set it for hearing, I guess, in 2 weeks at 10 a.m. on whatever that date is.
23rd, Your Honor, I believe.
23rd, and that way, if any hiccups between the parties come up, we can address it at that time. And now, out of curiosity, Mr. Henry, I'm curious as to how this works as far as just the jurisdictional deal. I find that another court's order is valid, and I don't know. I think it's concurrent, but we'll see.
To the extent you would have jurisdiction, Your Honor, I agree. The classification would be concurrent. The thought process is correct.
Okay.
We're not saying you do, but we're just saying that's the right thought process.
Okay, it's Friday. You know,
Yes, Your Honor.
I'm worried about the steaks I'm going to cook tonight instead of. So let's. Okay. All
We'll
right.
get you in order shortly, Judge.
Okay, get that to me, and if something weird happens, we'll conference call with the attorneys
Yes, Your Honor.
if I'm available. So for today, but I think I was very clear on how it was going to go down today.
I believe so, Your Honor. Yes.
Okay. All right, y'all. But if I don't
right.
talk to you, everyone have a good weekend. And
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Judge.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Hill.
May we be excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Everyone's excused.